The United States Supreme Court has just triggered a constitutional earthquake, and almost no one is talking about how big this moment really is. An emergency ruling, decided by an overwhelming 8-1 vote, has abruptly shifted the direction of the Second Amendment fight, and the timing could not be more explosive. This was not a routine order, not a technical footnote, and not a quiet procedural move. This was the court stepping in forcefully, signaling that something fundamental about gun rights, gun restrictions, and constitutional authority is about to change, and all roads now lead to January 9th. Before we go any further, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. To understand why this ruling is different, you need to understand how rare an emergency Supreme Court intervention actually is. The court is designed to move slowly. It takes cases over months, sometimes years. When the justices break that pattern and act immediately, it means they believe serious constitutional damage is happening right now. An 8-1 vote in that context is almost unheard of. It means this was not a close call. It means the majority of the court, across ideological lines, agreed that the current handling of Second Amendment cases has crossed a line that cannot be ignored any longer.
At the heart of this emergency ruling is a growing conflict between the Supreme Court and lower courts. Since the Bruin decision, the court has made its position clear. Gun laws must be evaluated based on text, history, and tradition. Yet many lower courts and state governments have openly resisted that standard. Instead of following Supreme Court guidance, they have delayed cases, upheld restrictive laws temporarily, and created legal uncertainty that effectively neutralizes gun rights for years at a time. This emergency ruling is the court's response to that resistance.
Imagine being a law-abiding citizen who follows every rule, passes every background check, and still finds their right to carry or own a firearm blocked by vague standards or endless delays. You sue, you wait, and while you wait, your constitutional right means nothing in practice. The Supreme Court is now signaling that this strategy of delay may itself be unconstitutional. That is a massive shift, and it is why January 9th matters so much. January 9 is not just another court date. Legal analysts believe it could be the moment when the court decides whether it will finally enforce its Second Amendment framework nationwide or allow continued defiance by lower courts. If the court uses this date to clarify, expand, or reinforce its emergency ruling, the impact could be immediate. Entire categories of gun laws could be frozen, overturned, or sent back for reconsideration under stricter standards. Pay close attention to the phrase emergency ruling. This is the court saying that the harm is not theoretical. It is happening now. Rights are being restricted now, and the court is no longer willing to wait. That urgency changes everything. It puts pressure on states that have passed aggressive gun control laws, especially those relying on broad, sensitive place designations or discretionary licensing schemes that lack historical precedent. The 8-1 margin tells another important story. Supreme Court decisions that reshape constitutional law usually start with narrow splits. This one did not. When the court speaks with this level of unity, it often means the principle involved is about to become firmly embedded in American law. Think about past landmark rulings. When margins are wide, reversals become difficult, and lower courts are forced to comply. This ruling also exposes a deeper struggle over who ultimately controls constitutional interpretation. Is it the Supreme Court, or is it a patchwork of state courts and legislatures testing how far they can go? The emergency decision suggests the court is reclaiming its authority. It is drawing a line and saying that constitutional rights cannot depend on your zip code or the political preferences of your state government. Gun owners are not the only ones affected. Even people who do not own firearms should be paying attention. This case raises a critical question. Can government slowly erase a constitutional right by burying it under process, delay, and selective enforcement? If the answer is yes, no right is truly safe. If the answer is no, then January 9th could mark a turning point not just for the Second Amendment, but for constitutional rights more broadly. There is also a political dimension that cannot be ignored. Gun control advocates have pushed hard in recent years, believing the courts would allow experimentation and gradual expansion of restrictions. This emergency ruling throws that assumption into doubt. It signals that the Supreme Court may be prepared to strike down laws more aggressively and more quickly than before. That possibility is already sending shockwaves through state legislatures. At the same time, this moment carries risk. A strong Supreme Court stance could provoke legislative backlash. States may attempt new approaches, reworded laws, or alternative restrictions designed to survive judicial review. The battle will not end on January 9th, but the rules of engagement may change dramatically. Legal experts are watching for one key thing: whether the court uses January 9th to explicitly warn lower courts that failure to apply the text, history, and tradition test will result in immediate intervention. If that happens, it will effectively end years of legal maneuvering. It will force uniformity, and it will accelerate the resolution of Second Amendment cases nationwide. Here is why this feels different from past moments. The court is not just deciding a case, it is responding to defiance. Emergency rulings are the judicial equivalent of slamming a gavel on the table. They are meant to stop behavior, not merely comment on it. The message is simple and powerful. The Constitution is not optional. For everyday Americans, the stakes are enormous. Carry laws, magazine restrictions, licensing requirements, and enforcement policies could all be affected. Some laws may survive, others may not. But uncertainty is about to give way to clarity, and clarity often brings sweeping change. Remember this phrase because it matters. Rights delayed are rights denied. That idea is now at the center of the Supreme Court's emergency action. If the court follows through on January 9th, it could establish that constitutional rights must be protected in real time, not years later after endless litigation. To recap everything clearly, the Supreme Court has issued a rare 8-1 emergency ruling related to the Second Amendment, signaling serious concern over how lower courts and states are handling gun rights cases. January 9th is emerging as a critical date when the court may reinforce, expand, or finalize this intervention. The outcome could reshape gun law, redefine constitutional enforcement, and set precedents that last for decades.
If you want to stay ahead of this story, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who needs to understand what is coming. This is not just another legal update. This is a turning point, and history may look back at January 9th as the day the Second Amendment fight entered a whole new phase. The Supreme Court has just shaken the foundations of the Second Amendment debate in a way that very few Americans fully understand yet, and the consequences of this moment are far bigger than a single case or a single ruling. An emergency decision, delivered by a stunning 8-1 margin, has signaled that the highest court in the country believes something has gone seriously wrong in how gun rights are being handled across the nation. This was not slow, cautious, or symbolic. This was urgent, decisive, and deliberate, and it instantly turned January 9th into a date that could redefine the future of the Second Amendment.
Before moving deeper into what this means, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because developments tied to this ruling are unfolding rapidly, and staying informed right now is critical. Emergency rulings from the Supreme Court are extremely rare, and when they happen, they are meant to stop immediate constitutional harm. The court does not use this power lightly. An 8-1 vote sends an even louder message. The justices overwhelmingly agree that lower courts and state governments may be pushing gun regulations beyond constitutional limits. Since the Bruen decision, the Supreme Court has repeatedly emphasized that firearm laws must align with the text, history, and tradition of the Constitution, yet many states have continued passing aggressive restrictions while courts allow them to stand for years during litigation. This ruling suggests that patience has run out. January 9th matters because it may be the moment when the court decides whether to enforce its Second Amendment standards nationwide with real consequences. If the justices take further action, it could halt enforcement of certain gun laws immediately, force lower courts to speed up decisions, and strike down regulations that cannot survive historical scrutiny. That would change the legal landscape overnight, affecting concealed carry rules, licensing schemes, and so-called sensitive place restrictions across multiple states. This ruling also raises a much bigger question that goes beyond firearms. Can a constitutional right be effectively erased through delay, confusion, and selective enforcement? The Supreme Court's emergency move suggests the answer may be no. If rights must be protected in real time, not years later, then January 9th could mark a turning point not just for gun owners, but for constitutional rights as a whole. What makes this moment especially powerful is the unity behind the decision. Landmark Supreme Court rulings that reshape American law often carry wide margins, and those decisions tend to last. If the court follows through, states that have relied on legal gray areas may be forced to rethink their entire approach. The battle will not end, but the rules of the fight could change dramatically. In simple terms, this was not just another court update, it was a warning shot. The Supreme Court has made it clear that the Second Amendment is back at the center of constitutional enforcement, and January 9th could be the day that message becomes impossible to ignore. If you want to stay ahead of what happens next, stay engaged, stay informed, and do not underestimate how big this moment really is.